Shannon and James Radabaugh are going to be our readers today, but Shannon is not feeling well, so we pray for a quick return to health for her. Preceding today's lesson, which is from John 6, verses 1 through 21, Jesus had gotten in trouble with some Jewish leaders for healing on the Sabbath, and they questioned his credentials. Now Jesus is on the move again. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now, the Passover of the festival of the Jews was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not be enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, so also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who has come into the world." When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. When evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into a boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum. It was dark now, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The sea became rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were terrified. But he said to them, "It is I. Do not be afraid." Then they wanted to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the land toward which they were going. Thanks be to God. The lectionary, the repeating 3-year schedule of scripture readings, has focused our gospel readings in Mark. But today, we veer off into the Gospel of John. While Mark is pretty straightforward, no nonsense, but prone to exaggeration in his writing, John relies more on detail, more poetic language. He's less linear, less of an either-or writer, which can sometimes be challenging to sort out. There are also great touch points in John's gospel and ways of speaking about Jesus and God's work through Jesus that are not found in the other gospels. On reading this story of Jesus feeding the multitudes, I tried to imagine the scene. I think of hot summer days, maybe a Sunday afternoon. To take a break and escape the heat, folks head for a grassy span on the lakeshore. There might be people of all sorts there, high society and working class, all sprawled out enjoying the relief of a breeze, spreading out their baskets and coolers of food and drinks. In the gospel story, the only food mentioned is the bread and fish brought by a young boy. What were people thinking? Were they so drawn to this Jesus, so eager to hear what he had to say, they just forgot to pack a lunch? Did they think there would be food trucks parked nearby? Did the writer leave out details of other food to make for a dramatic story? Did the gifts of one boy inspire the generosity of others? Whatever the case, Jesus realized that all those Jews and Gentiles in the crowd were going to be hungry for something spiritual and hopeful, and for something to eat. Poor Philip is taken a little aback when Jesus asks him where they are going to get food for everyone. Didn't know that was part of the job description, Jesus. In the end, they use what they have available, and it is enough. There are at least a couple of messages that are coming out of this story that I'm struck by. First, there is the obvious miraculous nature of it. Once again, an event that helped people to understand who Jesus really was, his special connection to God. To me, it is not necessary to understand how it happened, or even to be clear about exactly what happened. The message, at least in part, is that in the presence of God's Spirit, the impossible becomes possible. We have to make room in our lives, in our hearts, to allow space for the movement of the Spirit. We have to respond and act in ways that create change and bring wholeness to all. There was, and there is, enough for everyone. The other piece that I find most interesting is that there was a second miracle in this feeding of thousands. It was miraculous that everyone was fed, for sure. But perhaps even more of a miracle, everyone was satisfied. No one was whining that so-and-so got more bread than me, or that the bread was only barley bread and not high quality. No one complained about the lack of variety, or that they didn't get to sit next to who they wanted. No one said, I'm not staying if I don't get what I want. Everyone was satisfied. Imagine that. In our world, we have dual problems. Many who have enough, or more than enough, are not satisfied. Many others don't even have enough to live well. A quote attributed to the late great comedian George Carlin says, "Trying to be happy by accumulating possessions is like trying to satisfy hunger by taking sandwiches all over your body." What does it take to be happy, to be satisfied with enough? And what does it take to provide enough for everyone to be satisfied? The writings of the New Testament happened in a pre-scientific culture, so explanations of how things happened and descriptions of natural phenomena are different from today. I wonder sometimes if the lack of scientific knowledge allowed faith to flourish more easily. A ton of knowledge is available in today's world. There's 24/7 news from around the world. Scientific discoveries are reported daily, and you can Google anything. But there are limitations with human knowledge. It's been said that knowledge is power. There's also a sort of powerlessness in knowing so much. The amount of knowledge about the needs in the world, the patterns of violence and discrimination, the levels of poverty, the urgency of climate crisis, it all is is just too much, and we don't know how to deal with it. Knowledge can paralyze us. It feels like there is overwhelming need, few resources, and no way forward. Jesus' disciples must have felt some of that same feeling. Their knowledge was that there were a lot of hungry people. It would take a lot to feed them all. And as far as they knew, resources were scarce. No way forward. But as commentator Cheryl Bridges-Johns says, for this text, the end of human knowledge is the beginning of love's knowledge. And that is enough to feed a multitude with much left over. There is always a way forward. In our world, there are multitudes needing to be fed, both food and spiritual sustenance, with bread and fish, and the good news of God, the presence of God's love. Our words are important in reaching hearts and minds, but they are not as filling as our loving actions. Where does our money go? Our advocacy, our votes, our energy to create change, our volunteer efforts? What are we capable of doing so that needs are satisfied? Isn't it interesting in today's story that before Jesus even thinks about what he's going to say to the people, he expresses concern for their physical hunger? Jesus was so concerned with individual and community needs for healing and wholeness. He had a vision for the possible, using the resources available and then creating space for more. Habitat for Humanity is an excellent example of the power of love's knowledge in making a way where there seems to be no way. Again, quoting from Cheryl Bridges-Johns, in 1976, when Millard and Linda Fuller began Habitat for Humanity International, there were few resources and a great need for affordable and decent housing for the working poor. With just a few tools and a small group of volunteers, it would have been easy to ask, like the disciples, what are these meager resources among so many needs? Yet the passion for justice, grounded in the incarnation of Jesus, compelled them forward. Today, Habitat for Humanity serves as a clear testimony to the multiplying power of love's knowledge. Vision and love's knowledge are also important in our church. Right now, the building has many needs related to heating and cooling systems, media systems, repairs and updates, and accessibility. Of course, the church is not the building. Its needs are not the same as the needs of hungry people. Still, our building and property are resources that we have, and we use them to support our mission and our ministry. They allow us to reach people who have a need for spiritual sustenance. We have space for our garden that feeds people's physical needs. We offer hospitality to musicians and educators and various groups. And when COVID is not running the world, we can and do more. Are we willing to risk taking bold steps so that those who hunger will have a place to come and be filled with the life-giving love of God? Are we willing to boldly and wisely use the resources we have available while making room for the Spirit to do more? Are we willing to work with our siblings in faith and our community partners to build the beloved community where everyone has enough and all are satisfied? Do we have the vision to take care of our building, a vital resource, and provide a place that offers the source of love? Are we ready to get our hands dirty in the garden and then wash up to prepare food that satisfies body and soul? We don't know the future. We never do. We don't know if the continuing pandemic will force us back into lockdown mode. We don't know what our financial picture will look like in coming years. We don't know who will continue to be here, who will no longer be here, who will join our faith movement in the days ahead. We don't know the future, but we can have a vision for the possible too. When we work together with imagination, determination, generous spirits, hospitality, love, and faith, then we have enough. That is the power of love's knowledge. We haven't yet looked into the story of Jesus joining the disciples in the boat in the rough sea waters. I will just briefly note that just as Jesus provided for the physical need to eat, he also steps in and cares about very human fears. When the seas of life are tormented with winds of fear and waves of destruction, Jesus is able to calm our storms. He is the presence that satisfies. Carol Winfrey Gillette is a Presbyterian minister who has written many new hymns. She writes lyrics to be used with old hymn tunes. Gillette has just made available a hymn that she wrote for the upcoming annual conference of Presbyterians for Earth Care. It has a theme of climate and earth care, but also fits well with the story of Jesus on the sea and the vision to care for all. The song is titled, "Through Devastating Storms." Through devastating storms, through times of heat and drought, through fire and flood, creation mourns and so cries out. As hot and cold extremes cause overwhelming need, the earth bears witness to the cost of human greed. We're always wanting more. We spend and build and buy. To meet our wants, we hurt the poor, till many die. The world that we have built is one we can't sustain, and all around us, God's creation cries in pain. Creator, by your grace, you give the gift of life. You entered into time and space in Jesus Christ. Your Spirit makes us strong to tend and heal and lift and helps us see creation as a sacred gift. There's no time left to wait. May we be bold to give. May we plant trees and advocate and gently live. God, as we love the earth and love each other too, may we bring hope and healing to this world with you. May we have love's knowledge and vision to use the resources available so that there is enough for everyone, so that we may bring hope and healing to this world, and all may be satisfied.